What's up, everyone, and welcome to Clear Talk. So in this video, we're going to be talking about Cuba. All right, we're going to talk about what's going on there right now and what does the United States have to do with it. All right, thank you very much for joining me here. If you are new to Clear Talk, welcome to the channel. Please consider checking out more videos from the channel. Consider subscribing, like, share, comment, all that good stuff to get more videos in front of more people to help grow the channel. Subscribe is the big thing, okay? Just to help out. We're trying to get to 500 subscribers at least. That's the goal. Please help us out. It's free for you, and helps us out tremendously here at Clear Talk. If you'd like to check out videos from my other channels, you have JMD there, JMDPLAY, JMD Puzzling. If you like what you see there, consider checking out, consider subscribing over there as well. That would help out those channels amazingly. Again, we're trying to get to 500 on Play and Puzzling as well. JMD's at a little over 1,000. It's doing pretty well. It's growing a little by little. But subscribing over there would be amazing and help out that as well. So if you want to go further than, just subscribing to help out, there's Patreon there. $3. You can support any of the channels that you would like to help grow those channels, to help grow Patreon, to help grow JMD Nation, and contribute to that growth however you would like. Any kind of contribution support you give is very much appreciated. I thank you very much. And if you are returning, you're freaking amazing. You're amazing. Welcome back to Clear Talk. And keep coming back because you're what makes JMD Nation. Okay, so, all right, we're going to talk about Cuba here. First, we have a good video here of an interview with Ryan Grimm on Newsmax. Okay, Ryan Grimm, if you not know, he is one of the founders of Drop Site News. He does an amazing job. He's an amazing guy. He's an amazing journalist. And he went to Cuba, I think maybe last week or something, with Piker and a whole list of others that was bringing aid to Cuba, as far as I think food and stuff like that, different things that they need to help the people there. And the Newsmax host here is trying to reframe this and act like it is, oh, this group of people went to help the regime. And Ryan just breaks him apart here, showing him and his audience what's truly going on and what's really happening here. It's a great video. I'm going to go through the interview, and then I wanted to also show a little bit of what Ryan talks about, things that he also witnessed that they didn't get around to talking about in the interview. And then I'm going to break down this history of between the United States and Cuba. I'm not going like super deep, but I want to just on the surface show what has happened and why Cuba is in the shape it's in and what that has to do with the United States. So stay here for the whole video if to get all of that. So thank you very much, and let's get to it. Swap over here. All right, here we go with the interview. Let's check it out.
Dropside News reporter Ryan Grimm also traveled to Cuba as well, reporting on all this.
You see here, they highlight Ryan Grimm, they highlight Piker, along with the rest of this crew here.
Seen in this photo here. And Ryan joins us tonight, and it's good to have you back on the show. The Trump administration is trying to end a 70-year regime. It looks like these guys, along with you there, are trying to help it survive. Am I missing something?
Wait, they're trying to do what?
Trying to help this regime survive.
Who is?
Piker, most of the people there. I'm wondering if yourself along with them are included in that.
This is some sort of gotcha they think they have here. Like, you're twisting them doing humanitarian aid and assisting the people there is somehow assisting the regime. It's the same talking points that Israel did with Gaza. That if you bring humanitarian aid, or if humanitarian aid gets into the people to help the people out, then that is in turn assisting Hamas in staying in power. And it's just bullshit. It's always been a bullshit thing to say. But in Newsmax is the same. They're trying to carry on the same type of argument here that Israel made on creating a genocide. Let's just put it that way in Gaza. It's absolutely insane to say that something like this. But again, Ryan Grimm does a great job of countering this.
Yeah, the group that went along brought about 50 tons worth of medical supplies and solar panels. That's right.
Medical supplies and solar panels, and a lot of sympathies for the regime that controls the country. I mean,
He's like going to bypass medical supplies and solar panels and a lot of sympathy. It's not a bruh. Now he's trying to he.
So let me try to help out your viewers a little bit here.
Right.
How do you feel about the fact that when Americans travel to a foreign country, in this case Cuba, they are told specifically a list of hotels that they are allowed to stay in another country?
I went through it because when I went and stayed there, it was the same. I stayed in an Airbnb. I think if you have if our country's trying to squeeze, our country's trying to.
What do you think of that?
He has a point.
I think our country's trying to end a regime that's been torturing people for a very long time, and they don't want to fund it. They don't want us funding it by paying money to a communist-owned entity like a hotel.
So if their system of government is so awful, why not just let it fail on its own? Why do we have to blockade them? And how do you think,
because they won't leave. They don't have elections. They won't leave power.
How do you think the United States economy would do if we cut off fuel for 3 straight months? No fuel has basically gotten into Cuba since the Venezuela operation.
Yeah, but I was there in 2019, Ryan, and it was still a horribly impoverished country. But we're cutting off fuel to try and get this leadership out. Get them the hell out of there because they won't leave. They won't have an election. They won't leave.
Why do you care about like who's in charge in Cuba? Who elected you to do that? It's such a bizarre. Like there aren't enough problems in the United States here for you to worry about. Like
that's another side of it.
Really, like I can't even get my mind to a place where I would think it's my call. Like who runs Cuba? Who runs Haiti? Who runs Mexico? Who runs Iraq? Who runs Iran? Like
that's a fair Israel. That's a fair criticism. That's a fair criticism, but I mean, do you think it's better for? Do you want this regime to continue to run this country against the wishes of the people?
It's not
that
up
are
to
all
me.
impoverished.
It's not up to me. I live in Washington D.C. I vote in Washington D.C. elections, and I vote in federal elections. Where do you live?
You live in that's fair.
But where do you live?
I live in New York. And it's not.
Why should you vote? Why should you like? What do you have to do with Cuba?
Well, I think the prosperity of that country that's only 90 miles away from our border can't be a bad thing. And I'm just saying, what I'm asking you is,
then why not let them import oil?
It's fine. It's not America first. Let's put it there. But do you think that regime should be running the country?
Why? And that is the thing there. The America first is a part of the problem. It's this American imperialism, this American supremacy, where we think that our way has to be everybody else's way. It's not enough that we think our way is the best way. And, we would want people to see that it's the best way and then voluntarily, change their system. No, we want to we try to force countries to change to our ways so that we can benefit from that. And that's the thing. That's where it goes too far. It's the America first, the pride, the supremacy part there, where we think that we need to force people. It's the same thing, even internally, when you have groups of people that are so prideful that they want to force people in their specific ideology or whatever, instead of just allowing people to be free and choose how they want, like a true democracy would be. They don't want the world to be a democracy. They want specific countries to fall under our democratic rule. That's the difference.
Does it bother you if Mexico sells oil to Cuba? You live in New York. In what world is it a New Yorker's responsibility to stop Mexico from selling oil to Cuba?
That's okay. Fair criticism right there. My question to you is, why do you care? Why did you travel there? Why did you? If you don't care, why did you travel there to try and support the regime?
I'm a journalist, and the United States is literally killing people. We are killing people. I toured 2 hospitals. One was a pediatric hospital.
Yep.
I don't even know how to answer
We implemented a new rule in February that says that if you're a private business, you can import oil. You can import fuel. So the hotel where we were required to stay is allowed by the United States government to have fuel. Hospitals because they have a publicly run healthcare system, are not allowed to have fuel. I heard a lot of people complaining that the hotel still had power, but the hospitals didn't, not understanding apparently that it is a U.S. rule that blocks the hospitals from getting fuel. I toured the pediatric hospital. You know what the nurses and doctors there told me? They said when the power goes out, they immediately turn on their phone lights and race to the babies on ventilators.
Let me ask you this.
Because there's a gap between hold on.
I understand.
Hold on one second.
We're killing babies with
There's a gap between when the power goes out and when the generator kicks in that can be up to like 5 or 6, 7 minutes. A baby can die in that time on a ventilator. So they have to take their phone, turn the light on, race and hand pump the ventilator. Because the United States has decided that Mexico can't sell oil and fuel to Cuba. What does that have to do with the United States?
Well, that's fine. If you want to say it's not America first, that's fine. But let me ask you this. How many tens of thousands of people have died over the last 30, 40 years as this country has lived in extreme poverty? 88% of the people live in extreme poverty. The government will not allow any kind of capitalism in to bring these people up, to bring the quality of life up. How many thousands and thousands of their own people has that government killed? We're trying to strangle out of government here.
That is an
and yes, there's going to be ancillary, there's going to be some negative impacts of that, like you just described. That's fair. But
negative impacts. The possibility of babies on ventilators dying is just a negative impact. I mean, that happens, you know. It's kind of like the trumpet, you know, in war, death happens, you know, like casualties happen. But we still got to do it. Like, it's like, oh my gosh, it's so disconnected from morality, disconnected from humanitarian like needs and like rule of thumb about protecting people, protecting the innocent, caring about the innocent. Because ain't no way in the fucking world you can argue to me that a baby in a ventilator is guilty of something. And therefore, our actions, which do not protect that baby, are justified. Now, oh, fuck you. Seriously. And I guarantee you this guy probably turns around and tries to act like he's such an amazing Christian. I am almost willing to bet that he speaks in the name of Jesus while defending our country for embargoing and preventing Cuba from getting oil, therefore resulting in infants potentially dying. Because there have been, he's talking about 5 or 6 minutes here for a generator can come on. But then the generators can only last for so long because they also run on fuel. And there have been periods of days without electricity before they could get the electricity back up and running. You are putting people at risk, lives at risk, innocent people, because you want to overthrow a regime. Okay, I guess you don't care about protecting the innocent. You literally, you're saying you do not care about protecting the innocent. That's what you're arguing. I don't think Jesus would be okay with that. Just saying.
Died because of the government in power.
So I interviewed the number 3 guy in Cuba. I will let you have the interview. You can air the entire thing. He said Cuban nationals, Americans, are welcome to invest in Cuba. He said they're open to, in a holistic negotiation, compensating Americans for property that was seized during the revolution.
Well, they're capitulating now. Right.
What they want, they offered that in the 1960s. The United States refused it because we thought we were going to do regime change. So why take a deal if we're just going to do regime change?
Here's the article if you want to go check this out. Exclusive. Cuba is prepared to discuss compensation to Americans who lost property in the 1959 revolution.
Let me.
We didn't overthrow the government. We failed over and over and over. We tried to assassinate Fidel Castro, like a dozen plus times. We tried an invasion, Bay of Pigs. It didn't work. Every other country, Italy, France, Spain, they all took compensation for what was nationalized. So they're saying you can invest here.
Yeah.
We will compensate you for what was nationalized. All we're asking is that you lift the sanctions and leave us alone. Why is that a bad idea? Leave Cuba alone.
Leave the regime alone and let the people continue to suffer. I mean, did you see the people there? The misery of the people that live in that country under these a-holes? It's horrific.
The misery is...
The misery that's happening in that country under the a-holes is the United States. Because understand, and we will go over here when I break down, we have been sanctioning and embargoing oil and energy and food and everything else to Cuba since the 1960s. Okay, understand that is the longest sanction and embargo of any country basically in history. The U.S. on Cuba. Holding down, oppressing, and suppressing the ability for Cuba to even be able to be successful. For them to able to be, in the international market, money and everything else. We'll go over all that. But it's the United States is what has held them down. Yes, people will argue that their socialist government and policies is also a big contributor to it. But you can't even actually argue that it is that the policies that they were implementing was unsuccessful when they can't even have access to stuff that would actually allow for any kind of system. I don't care if it's a capitalist system, a socialist system, a communist system. If you are not able to have access to funding and development and people investing, you can't be successful, period. So you can't even argue that policies is a problem. When literally from the capitalist point of view, we have sanctioned and held them down, preventing them. And that's what the United States has done over and over and over with countries like Cuba. And it's all to make the argument to Americans, hey, you see this communist country here, quote unquote. You see this socialist company here, quote unquote, and how bad they are and how unsuccessful they are. You see how much the people suffer. Be glad that you're in a capitalist democracy. But they fail to mention that the reason why those countries are so held down and can't be successful is because we have quite literally forced a situation where they can't be successful. We have done that as the greater, higher, more influential government. Just so that we could say, hey, point and look, hey, see how bad they are? See how bad they are? See how bad they are? You don't want that. You don't want that. Stay with us. Stay with us. Is U.S. imperial control trying to make sure that the American people stay as much on the side of capitalism, a capitalist market and capitalist system that has went further and further and further and further towards the wealthy and rich, to crony capitalism, just so that we will continue to defend it in the name of not wanting to be like those people. It's absolutely disgusting. Instead of just letting them be successful in the best way that they can be successful with the system that they have. We don't want that. We want to argue that they need to have our system, because in their system, they aren't allowing for privatization so that we can just send companies in and do whatever we want to with their land and resources, anything else. They allow us the same thing that happened in Venezuela, the same thing that happened in Iran. It's the reason why people that we don't like, regimes that we don't like, regimes that we say are so bad to their people, we try to take over and act like we need to overthrow them and get rid of them and bring democracy to them. But yet we have multiple ally nations with quote unquote regimes that do the same thing to their people. They are oppressive and suppressive to their people in the same fucking way. In some cases, even worse. Saudi Arabia, for one of the absolute worst regimes in the world. But we aren't trying to overthrow them. You know why? Because we're in cahoots with them, in deals with them, where they allow us to strip all we want of resources, and we do deals so that they enrich themselves. The regime enriches themselves, not the people. So you have a regime over there that is rich as hell, all kinds of money, because they're doing inner deals and stuff with the United States and allowing us to put bases there and all kinds of stuff and get resource connections and whatnot. So they work with us and they play good with us. And that's the reason why we aren't trying to overthrow them, even though they do some of the stuff, if not worse actions to their people than the Cuban government does to its people. But the difference is Cuba does not work with us. Venezuela didn't want to work with us. Iran doesn't want to work with us. Because they previously did. They previously saw how much we were trying to overthrow and take advantage of their systems. We were trying to enrich ourselves off of what they had for resources. And they said, you know what? No, fuck that. We don't want you to enrich yourself off of us stuff. We want to also be and get a part of this. We want to get a part of the pot too. This is our resources. This is our land. This is stuff that we should be getting the majority of the enrichment from. But instead, you are taking it all. No, let's nationalize it, so that we own it ourselves, and then we'll sell it to you. The U.S. didn't want that. Didn't work for the U.S. It doesn't work for others that were a part of that, like UK, the British stuff. Like we were like, no. The West. We were like, no. That's not the way we work. We want to have full access, freedom to do whatever we want and take everything we want. And we'll give you enough to keep you going and make you, happy. Kind of the same thing we do with our own citizens. And when we said that, there's like, okay, fuck off then. That's what Iran did. You had a revolution there. Venezuela, same thing. Cuba, you had the same thing. This is repeated history in multiple places. And it's all around the United States trying to control resources, trying to have control of oil and fuel. Unregulated, uncontrolled, fully us in control. That's what it's all about. That's what all of this is about. And then we have to, and then we make this image of, oh, they're so bad. They're so bad to their people. So that's the reason why we need to take them over. That's the reason why we have to make them collapse. In order for us to make them collapse, we've got to create all kinds of financial strains and sanctions and everything and make the people suffer so that they will get mad enough to hope that they will take over this government. If they can. But if not, then we will eventually step in and just try to force them out. But we also aren't very good at that. So I don't know. I mean, it's just like, but it continues to create this conflict, and ultimately, even not being able to do regime change benefits the United States because the war complex, military, weapons, ammunitions, all those companies, they get rich. They get super rich off of it. So it benefits either way. It doesn't even matter if we win the war. Like or do the objectives that we say were the reason why, like in Iran, regime change or whatever. It doesn't even matter in the long run because those that wanted to make money off of it made money off of it. And that's all good. I'm sorry, I went off on a major tangent. Let's
Like unspeakable.
Unspeakable.
It is unspeakable.
Been that way for a long time.
It's a lot worse. It's the people who were there in December and people who obviously live there telling me like it's noticeably worse. You have people like starvation and homelessness wasn't really a thing. Like there was poverty. It wasn't like
extreme
a rich
poverty.
country.
Yeah.
But even a few months ago,
90% of the people live under $2 a day. I mean, that's nobody in America lives under $2 a day.
That shows the ignorance of this guy. That also is based on the cost of living there. That's not to say that, they don't deserve more than that. They probably do. They're probably in the same situation we are here, where even our cost of living is way higher than what our minimum wage is. Our minimum wage hasn't went up. I don't know why he's want to argue that, they don't make but this. Well, the United States minimum wage hasn't went up in over 20 years. You're not trying to argue for that, are you? You're not trying to argue for American people to make more money, are you? No. So it's just such a cop-out kind of thing. But they're more than likely under the same situation. They can't get paid more because they're not allowed to, but it's not like the economy there or like prices and stuff there or is it so expensive to live there as it is here. It's just not the same. Anyways, and then real quick, I wanted to go back, and this is where Ryan talks about a few things that he didn't get to talk about in the interview.
So it's important to just understand the reality of who is actually causing the suffering. It is the sanctions, it's the embargo, blockade, the state sponsor of terror designation. In this interview, we didn't get into kind of the details of it. But as you saw from the last segment, like Cuba is, blocked from, purchasing MRI machines for the most part, or getting helium to keep their MRI machines running. They can't buy anything that has a minimum of 10% of U.S. parts in it. Even when they end up they bought a 3D printer to try to get around this so that they could produce medical supplies, these unique medical supplies that people needed. It broke down. The German company said they can't send a tech out because of the U.S. sanctions. And they said that's not true. Like there's an EU law that says, and Michel Valdez-Sosa relayed this story to me. He was on the phone with the vice president. He said, there's an EU law that says you're not allowed to follow U.S. sanctions.
Yeah.
Because it's EU sovereignty.
Yeah.
Means that you have to make your own decisions. You cannot be driven by U.S. sanctions. And the guy told him, yeah, I know that law is on the books. We do a lot of business with the United States. We don't do much business with Cuba. I'm sorry that you bought $1 million 3D printer from us. We're not going to be able to fix it. And so it's just sitting there collecting dust. So we didn't get into a lot of those details about the way that the
crazy
sanctions and the embargo play a primary driver of the immiseration of the island. But the point I did make to him is, if you think that's not true and the system is so flawed and unable to succeed, let it try.
And make it
exactly. Let it try. Give them all the opportunity to succeed. And then once they don't, then be like, see, we gave you every opportunity. We helped you out everything. We gave you full access to everything, and you still failed. That's the reason why capitalism is better. That should be the play that we do. But instead, we throw all kinds of sanctions and embargoes and everything else and hold them down unknowingly, for the most part and for the longest time, to American people, because the American people didn't have access to that type of information all the time, or you'd have to go to extremes to even figure that out. But now that we live in an information age that we do live in, those that actually give a shit, just like with anything America says what we do or we don't do, or that, you know, reason why we do this or that or whatever, wars and sanctions and who's bad and who's not. If you'd actually do the research and you'd come to find out things where America, you know, this America great again, America's never been fucking great. We haven't. Okay. So right now, like he was talking about, we have major sanctions and embargoes on oil and stuff, trying to basically break down the economy, not allowing them to anybody to trade oil with them at this point. You previously did a lot of trading with Venezuela, they're doing with Mexico, the few people that they could get around from the U.S. and what embargoes and sanctions that we've had on them to try to get. That's how they've been able to keep going. And after we took Venezuela, or removed Maduro, anyways, we got control of part of the oil there, preventing Venezuela from being able to trade oil with them. And then we turned around to further cripple them. We made it to where Mexico couldn't trade with them. And we've done this. We've impacted and dominoed on all these different things to crush the economy so that they are not getting oil and stuff to run their electrical system. The electrical system is old and broken down anyways because of all the years of sanctions and embargoes that we have had on them since the 60s, because they can't get in investments and stuff to help out with that. So there's a whole lot of problems there, and that creates a vacuum in the entire system to where they can't, you know, you have shortages with not only energy, electricity, but that causes shortages in food and water and everything else because of the system's dependency on that. So since the 1960s. Okay, that's when we started. First with Kennedy. Kennedy in 1962, after in 1960, the U.S. first imposed partial economic restrictions after the Cuban Revolution. That was from Fidel Castro. We didn't like Fidel Castro, so therefore we put sanctions on them. It was full embargo put on them for a short term there from 1962. Then you have sanctions that were tied to Cuba aligning with the Soviet Union through the Cold War. We put further sanctions on Cuba there. That remained for decades, especially after the Cuban Missile Crisis. Then in the 1990s, the U.S. tightened those sanctions even more. We had the Helms-Burton Act in 1996, which made embargoes harder to lift. So this locked in sanctions into law unless Cuba made some sort of political changes, which they have not. Under Barack Obama from 2014 to 2016, we had temporary easing. Obama tried to do diplomatically, very much like he did with Iran. Tried to do diplomatic relations to restore stuff. Travel, business restrictions and stuff were partially loosened, even though the embargo was never fully lifted. But he was trying to fix relations. Okay, that was something I actually can say about Obama, that he actually tried in many ways. A lot of the countries like Iran, like even I think Venezuela, like Cuba here, he tried to work out relations with them so that to give them relief sanctions to help our trade agreements, or at least within time, if we were to give them relief and let them be able to sort of bring themselves back up over time, we could hopefully, with Iran, it was, trying to officially like protect like in a U.S. way, even though Iran already stated that, from 2003 that they were not, with the fatwa, that they were not going to build weapons, and that was against their, religious sort of law. For the U.S. to be like, but we have a rule that puts this sort of in stone. Obama did the nuclear agreement with them, which we know then turned around and got ripped up by Trump. And the fallout from there is what's happened. Same thing here. Barack tried to do the same thing with Cuba, tried to get diplomatic relations to try to work out so they could eventually work up with trade, work out issues, and, whatever. But then, of course, when Trump came into office in 2017, he basically withdrew from all of that, as he did with everything Obama did, adding sanctions expansions, travel and finance flows were tightened. Cuba was added back to the terrorism-related list. Then under Biden, didn't really change much. He did ease up a little bit on some travel resistance and stuff, but pretty much the court sanctions and embargoes continued because he was more concerned with, at that point, by Ukraine and Russia, and what was going on with Israel and Gaza. So Cuba was like the bottom of the list there. Even when it come to Iran, him not getting back into a nuclear deal with Iran, which he should have done immediately. Biden failed on a lot of things, on a lot of diplomatic, like international geopolitical stuff. He failed on a lot of that. And then of course Trump taking over now and going, this is Trump 2.0. Everything he did in his first administration, now with the unrestrictedness, people put in place that won't tell him no. They're doing whatever they want. And not only not telling him no, but people in place that purposefully want things to happen in these countries, purposely want these regimes to be overthrown. And there's, specific people for each one. There's the Iran people that want that regime change. There's the Cuba people that want that. There's the Venezuela people that want that. Like this was strategically put together on purpose. And now we have what's going on now. And so we have here 60 years of oppression, sanctions, embargoes that have held this country down to not be successful, okay? For the point that Cuba, from Kennedy, Cuba could not freely trade with the U.S., okay? Which is their huge market, a nearby market. Foreign company risk penalties if they do business with Cuba. They had financial isolations. Cuba could not work on international bank system that was tied to the United States. So it was hard for them to get loans, credits, investments. The U.S. was always pressuring suppliers to not give oil to them, like Venezuela or other countries. And then when same thing with Venezuela, Cuba started working with China or Iran or Russia or anything like that to try to get some sort of relief. Then that just made us go even harder on them. We would put pressure on companies not to supply the oil. Because they struggled to get access to banking systems, it was hard to pay importers, which then made it hard for them to find suppliers for food, for medicine, for infrastructure repair, all these kinds of things. Even ships that docked in Cuba wouldn't be able to enter U.S. ports for months afterwards. So companies avoided Cuba altogether. That was the pettiness of it. If you dock at Cuba and do any kind of even the smallest little bit of trade with Cuba, then you can't even enter U.S. ports. And it's this type of sanctions and embargoes and control that even under any argument that you have for a socialist system, or what they are trying, now what all the Republicans call communist. It's not a communist system, it's just a socialist system. But nevertheless, they think it's all the same, or they act like it's all the same. Even if all the things that you think is bad with the system, and you think it's a bad system and it, shouldn't happen, why not just still let it happen? Why not still, assist them the best way we could, give them free access? Why restrict them? Why sanction them? Just let them have free reign. Let them have, just like every other sovereign country, let them be them. Even if you don't like it, let them be them. And it doesn't matter who we're talking about. Any of the Latin America or Southern America countries or whatever government, or even anybody else. Anywhere in Africa, anywhere in Europe, anywhere in Asia, anywhere in Russia, anywhere, like, they voted in, whether it was, free or fair or whatever, to the degree that even our the argument here lately about our own elections being free and fair, we're seeing that come to potentially an end, the way it's looking. Doesn't matter. Let their governments fail on their own. Give them every opportunity, but let them fail on their own. But see, that's the thing. We don't want even the possibility of any country, any socialist system, or even any communist system. There's a reason why we can't stand China, and we try to push China so hard, because you have a communist, quote unquote, system there that's actually successful. You may point to here and there and things like, people are having problems here or having problems there, or don't have control of this or don't have control of that. But nevertheless, the government and the country in its whole is successful. That's the reason why we have such a hatred right now, because we can't control that. We can't stop that. We can't protect that image. And China is ever growing and growing and having more influence and openly being seen as easier to trade with and easier to do business with than even the fucking United States now. And that is eating us alive. We've been able to control for decades now all these countries that had socialist governments, or outside of Russia too, but like all these other countries, all these small countries, we've been able to control, and then we've been able to oppress and keep and hold down, so that we had this image, we had somewhere to point to be like, look at them, look at them, look at them. You don't want that here in the U.S., to try to squash any uprising or any talk about something that would be even remotely connected with socialism in any kind of way, or even communism within the United States. Can't have those commies. We can't have those socialists. So we got to cripple some countries and make them to have as scapegoats for us, to be like, look at them. See how bad they are? You don't want to be like that. So don't talk about socialism. Don't talk about communism. But the reason why those countries aren't successful, or even could have even a bit of success, is because we are holding them down. We are economically and structurally breaking them little by little over time with sanctions and embargoes and everything else, keeping them, restricting them on the global market. I mean, this is This is U.S. imperialism 101. This is U.S. imperialism at its. And you wonder why. You wonder why countries and people in Iran, in Venezuela, even in Cuba, have such a bad idea of the U.S. Why we're called evil, why we're called the big Satan, why we're called, why they say death to America. It's not saying death to Americans. It's not saying death to the whole idea of America. It's death to the imperialist control government and entities that have been in our leadership for decades, trying to control and hold down countries that do not agree with our ways, do not agree with our government, do not agree with our system. And that's the U.S. way. If you do not agree with us, we will do everything to break you. We are the bullies. It's either our way or the highway, which is the exact opposite of what China is doing. And the reason why China has been so successful over the last couple of decades, because instead they go the opposite direction. They go, hey, you have some problems? You want to do some trade with us? We would like access to this. We would like to help. We would like to benefit in this kind of way because you have this resource, you have this resource, and we really need those resources. It would help us with this market and this kind of trade and this kind of trade and help our people in this kind of way. But we can also see that you need some help. You need some help in this and this and this and this. So how about we do this? How about we help you with that? Because we have a lot of in this industry and we can help you with your infrastructure. We can help you grow and build things. We can help you do all these kinds of things. And then in return, we get a little bit of this, we get a little bit of that, so we can help out. Like, they are willing to work together and create a healthy working environment, healthy working trade, where the United States instead goes, yeah, we want this, we want that, and you either give it to us or we're going to fuck you up. And while that may have worked back in what MAGA calls the great days of America, but that doesn't work now. This is a new time. This is a new era. There are more players on the field that are apparently have seen the olive leaves, have seen the writing on the wall, and are doing a better job. They are seeing that, you know what? People actually like it when you're just nice. People work together with you when you're just nice. When you don't try to beat up on them and fuck them over. You actually get more productivity out of people when you're just, good to them. And all these quote unquote bad countries have figured that out. And they're growing on the international scene. Where the U.S., the people that are being in control, especially now, or let's just say, for a lack of better words, living in the old days. It's old school. Old school imperialism, old school control. The peace to strength illusion. And what they really mean by that is peace for us while we are strong on you. We are causing the pain in Cuba right now. We are causing a humanitarian crisis in Cuba. We are doing like a light version of Israel's genocide on Gaza. Except for we're not dropping the bombs yet. I wonder when that's going to start. Let me know what you think. Until next time, peace. Clear Talk. I'm out.